In Washington, Secretary of War Ulysses S. Grant reviewed intelligence reports from the Yucatan. His agents had been captured, but not before confirming what he suspected. A Confederate colony was firmly established and growing. He called in General Philip Sheridan, the man who had overseen the Union's harshest campaigns. Grant's instructions were clear: increase covert support to Juarez, strengthen his army, and quietly eliminate the Yucatan settlement. Grant had already provided crucial support to Benito Juarez during the fight to overthrow Emperor Maximilian. With Maximilian gone and Juarez back in power, Grant now saw the settlement as a direct challenge to Union victory and to Mexico's stability. The leaders were to be captured or executed. Officially, nothing would link Washington to the operation. In Mexico City, Grant's orders arrived with quiet urgency. President Benito Juarez, now master of a war-torn and nearly bankrupt nation, wasted no time.
At the port of Sisal, Ellis staged a masterstroke of propaganda. Before assembled European diplomats, foreign merchants, and a throng of American and European newspapermen, he unveiled his prize, a captured U.S. spy.
What you have all witnessed is the illegal actions of a corrupt and tyrannical government. They attacked a peaceful settlement in a foreign land where they have no legal authority. Major Riley and his men can go back home. They are not our prisoners. But let this be a warning. Next time the United States wants to destroy something, it might be you.
Into this tense and watchful port came a man both feared and admired, Nathan Bedford Forrest. One of the Confederacy's most brilliant cavalry commanders, his lightning raids and battlefield victories had made him a legend of unconventional warfare. Yet his fortune was gone, and his name stained by the controversies of war and the clan. Now, Forrest came to the Yucatan not as a conqueror, but as a man seeking redemption, determined to rebuild his life and turn his talents toward a new cause in this audacious settlement.
What we've heard from our spies in America about this new secret society, or whatever they call themselves, it's barbaric. It is everything we do not need. I understand his brilliance, but is it really worth it? I think he's dangerous. To all of us. He's too much of a risk. Ellis wasted no time. He dispatched Nathan Bedford Forrest alongside Ambrosio José González, the fiery Cuban revolutionary and his trusted diplomat in Central America. Their task was audacious: to rally discontented factions in Honduras and Guatemala and to reach the embattled Tzotzil Maya rebels of Chiapas. Still locked in the brutal caste war, Ellis envisioned a coalition of fighters who could destabilize Juárez's reach and buy the settlement time. Benjamin was sent south to Costa Rica, charged with purchasing land for a fallback settlement should Yucatan be lost. The two men parted without ceremony, neither certain if it would be the last time they would see one another.
Through a network of spies in Washington, Breckinridge brought urgent news to Ellis. Radical Republicans were determined to see the Yucatan settlement destroyed. President Johnson stood as the last barrier, but with impeachment looming and Grant's rise imminent, nothing could halt their advance. Time, Breckinridge warned, was no longer an ally.
Ellis had less time than he realized. Juárez's forces were already at the doorstep of the Yucatan. 10,000 soldiers had landed in Campeche, reinforced by the remnants of the Mexican Navy after years of conflict. Another 5,000 disembarked at Sisal. The settlement was cut off from both major ports, supplies severed, and still the war had not yet begun. Ellis felt the weight of it pressing down. Two massive armies bearing down, and Juárez's demands were uncompromising. Lay down your arms, leave immediately, surrender all property, the treasury, and the railroad. They could leave with their lives or face annihilation. Time was the only commodity Ellis could not buy. The rail workers had been recalled, 1,000 troops sent with Santos to Baja, leaving barely over 5,000 men to defend the Republic against overwhelming odds. Ellis walked through the settlement, past the homes, workshops, and fields that had risen from nothing. Every face he passed, every laborer, every family, bore the weight of hope, and they all depended on him. This was no longer a dream or deeds or ink on paper. This was real. Ellis knew he would give his life to protect this world they had built. Ellis had dispatched his finest cavalry commander, Joe Shelby, alongside Santos, with Brigadier General Sterling Price and Cherokee General Stand Watie and his native warriors. It was a decision that haunted him, yet one he made trusting the counsel of his military commander, Edmund Kirby Smith. Ellis would lead the cavalry himself. And as doubt gnawed at him, it was answered in a way he had not expected. 2,000 Chan Santa Cruz rebels appeared at the settlement, ready to fight. They were no longer relying on what Ellis could give them. They believed in him. They believed in the fledgling nation he had forged. The Republic of Yucatan was no longer a dream. It was real, and it was theirs to defend.
Mexican General Miguel Negrete seized control of Mérida, and Ellis knew he could trust no one among the city's elites. They would act in their own interests, and Juarez would take everything if given the chance. General Negrete deployed his forces to surround the settlement and crush it with his superior artillery. But Kirby Smith had no intention of waiting on the defensive. With Jubal Early leading a fierce, unrelenting assault, the Mexican troops were overwhelmed before they could reach the settlement. What followed was a brutal assault from all sides. With the shocked and outnumbered Mexican forces surrendering within hours, Juarez artillery was now in Confederate hands. Ellis moved swiftly. He took control of Mérida, seized the Mexican ships at Sisal, and raised the Bonnie Blue flag. The Confederate Republic of Yucatan was no longer an idea. It was a nation.
But Ellis was far from finished. On New Year's Day he had ordered a coordinated strike from every quarter. Ambrosio Jose Gonzalez had not merely assembled a regiment of rebels, he had forged a 4,000-strong army of war-ready troops. No longer under fractured and undisciplined leadership, they were commanded by the aggressive and unrelenting Nathan Bedford Forrest, whose tactics were simple. Strike first and destroy the enemy's supplies. Forrest's campaign swept through Mexican garrisons from Chiapas, culminating in the capture of the capital of Tabasco, a vital economic asset for Juarez now lost. The war had changed. The hunter had become the hunted. Juarez, who had begun the conflict encircling Ellis, now found his forces trapped, forced to retreat from Campeche and into the violent jungles, facing a new rebel legion with ruthless discipline and unrelenting ferocity.
The second wave came from the sea. Ellis's navy, commanded by Matthew Fontaine Maury, launched a coordinated strike against the Mexican fleet anchored in the Bay of Campeche. Juarez watched helplessly as his entire naval force was destroyed or captured. campaign had become a catastrophe. Desperate, Juarez turned to a man who had long been his political rival. Porfirio Díaz, brilliant, fearless, and uncompromising, was recalled from suppressing northern rebellions. With a force of 17,000 men, Diaz was tasked with crushing the new rebellion that now threatened the very foundation of Juarez's government. Porfirio Díaz's orders were monumental. A grueling, nearly 3-month march lay ahead to reach Campeche. But when he stopped in Tabasco, expecting to join 10,000 men, he found disaster instead. Only 6,000 remained, weakened by rebel attacks, illness, and desertion. With 20,000 healthy troops, the march to Campeche became a nightmare. Soldiers unaccustomed to Yucatan's climate perished from exposure, malaria, yellow fever, and dysentery. Guerrilla attacks harassed them night and day. And the eerie wails of death whistles preyed on their minds. Diaz feared a trap. The Confederates controlled intelligence. Forrest cut supply lines, early blocked advancement, Maury's navy waited offshore, and rebel forces lurked in the south.
Rather than risk a protracted siege, Diaz abandoned Campeche itself. With nearly 20,000 men, he planned to crush Ellis's smaller forces, seize the settlement, ending the rebellion once and for all.
Diaz's scouts revealed a jungle fortress where the bulk of Ellis's army lay in wait. Ellis had 3 months as Diaz's army slogged through the jungle. This was no mere defense. He meant to turn the Yucatan itself into a weapon. The collective minds he had gathered prepared for every scenario, studying every river, marsh, and stretch of jungle to transform them into traps. General Beauregard oversaw the defenses with meticulous precision. He chose as his base an ancient Mayan ruin near the railroad, a fortress of stone and shadow that allowed him to strike Diaz's supply lines in Campeche with guerrilla fighters, vanish into the jungle, and use the railroad to move men and supplies at will. It was this fortress, this nerve center of Confederate resistance, that convinced Diaz he had to attack. When Diaz finally arrived, he did not find a simple fort. Before him spread an intricate complex of embattlements and trenches, layered like a labyrinth. As his troops charged, they faced a barrage of artillery fire. Then came an onslaught of veteran sharpshooters with an endless supply of loaded rifles through thick, muddy terrain. Confederates fell back in planned retreats, drawing his soldiers deeper and deeper into Beauregard's trap, into kill zones of relentless rifle fire and grisly grape-shot artillery. What Diaz had believed to be the heart of Ellis's army was a killing ground designed to bleed his forces dry before the true battle had even begun. Wave after wave, he pressed the Confederates further back, convinced he was breaking their line. As his men pushed deeper, Diaz suddenly found himself beneath the very artillery Juarez had once sent to destroy the settlement, now turned against him. From the jungle, Early and Mosby struck with 3,000 Confederates and Mayan warriors, crashing into Diaz's flank and rear. What had begun as an advance turned instantly into a slaughter. Trapped between trenches and artillery, encircled by rifle fire and guerrilla fighters, Diaz's army fell into chaos as the battle dissolved into a massacre. The Battle of Campeche became a disaster without precedent. Of Diaz's 17,000 men who had set out to crush the rebellion, over 5,000 were killed outright in the jungle and trenches. Another 4,000 lay wounded or dying, and nearly 3,000 were taken prisoner or vanished into the swamps. Fewer than 3,000 soldiers followed Diaz in his desperate retreat back toward Tabasco, his once grand army reduced to a shattered remnant. In Washington, General Grant was stunned by the reports. Juarez's strongest force obliterated, his navy destroyed, and his grip on the Yucatan slipping away. On the shores of Campeche, Ellis, himself wounded in the fighting, watched the smoke drift over the ruined trenches. The Confederate Republic of Yucatan had survived its baptism by fire. Yet as he looked to the horizon, he understood the war was far from over. The Republic was real now, but its survival would demand even greater sacrifice. The Battle of Campeche was their baptism by fire. The Confederate Republic of Yucatan had survived, but the war was far from over. In Washington, a new president rises. Ulysses S. Grant, once merely an opponent, now turns his hatred of Ellis into obsession. And in the jungles of the Yucatan, Ellis's determination hardens into steel. The struggle enters a new phase, and the stakes have never been higher.
Burn like crimson gold through the night and through the cold. There is thick with smoke and ashes. I reach for whispers of the past. Watch the light as it fades away, like memories that turn to gray. As I take one last breath to slip into the dark embrace of death. Sleeps in silver waves, trees bend low but do not break, and I'm drowning in this stillness like a ghost the earth can't shake.